Welcome to Fit Strong Women Over 50 podcast, episode 116. Hi, I'm Jill. Thanks for joining us today.
And I'm Chris. Jill and I are your co-hosts and the founders of the Becoming Ellie community.
I know you're wondering why we're called Becoming Ellie. Ellie was the Norse goddess of aging who wrestled Thor and beat him. Chris and I thought, hey, we want to be like Ellie.
You can find out more about us at our website, becomingellie.com. And Ellie is spelled E-L-L-I.
If you go to the website, be sure to sign up for our newsletter there. It's a great way to know what's going on with us.
Jill, I'm really excited about today's episode.
Oh, I am too. We're talking with Britt about intermittent fasting, and she has a lot to tell us.
Yes, we first found out about Ellen from Denise Wakeman. And for those longtime listeners, you'll know we interviewed Denise way back in episode 45.
Yeah, I was surprised at how long ago that was. Right. We talked with Denise about her adventure travels, but intermittent fasting came up in that conversation. And I think it might be clear in this episode with Ellen, but the two of them work together.
Yes.
So anyway, today is a deep dive into intermittent fasting.
Let's go to the podcast.
Dr. Ellen Britt is the co-founder and principal writer of the Intermittent Fasting Insider, a bi-monthly newsletter that brings her audience the most compelling developments in intermittent fasting, as well as innovation and practices that can be stacked with IF. She also co-facilitates with her colleague, Denise Wakeman, an 1,800-member free Facebook group for entrepreneurs interested in intermittent fasting, as well as their latest paid membership project, the Longevity Experience.
Ellen has over 2 decades of experience as a PA in emergency and occupational medicine. She holds a doctorate of education in biology, as well as a master's in clinical psychology. Ellen lives and works just south of Atlanta, Georgia.
Wow, you really have an impressive background.
Yeah, I'll say.
Wow. It's called I'm old.
Okay.
You tend to stack things up after a while, you know.
I can appreciate that. So I understand that you've been very successful yourself with intermittent fasting. So I'm wondering, how long ago did you start intermittent fasting, and how did it help you?
4 years this past May. I've been doing it pretty much every day.
Okay, so over 4 years.
Yeah, over 4 years. And then in terms of success, I went into it like most people do for the weight loss benefits. I had already gone through menopause, and with menopause had packed on about 35 unwanted pounds. And as a PA, I knew everything to do, you know, what do they say? Move more, eat less, all that good
right.
stuff.
Yeah.
And I tried everything under the sun and just would not budge. It would not budge. And after a while, I just thought, well, you know, maybe this is just the way it's going to be. And I just shouldn't stress about it so much and just try to eat healthily and do the best I can, because I knew every medical thing in the books and had counseled many, many patients over the years about weight loss, to my chagrin. You know, and I thought, man, now I know why these women, and mostly women, couldn't get this weight off. So I think what I was doing, I'm a freelance medical writer now, in addition to my intermittent fasting stuff. And I had this client that I was doing an ebook for on, so I can't even remember the topic now, but I had to do a lot of research on it. And along the way, I kept running across these studies on intermittent fasting, and I kind of put them aside because it didn't have anything to do with the topic of the ebook. But you know how sometimes these things come along and they smack you in the face, you know. And after about the 5th reference, I thought, all right, Ellen, don't be stupid. Look into this. So I looked into it, and I couldn't really see any downside. And at that time, there were not a lot of it wasn't as popular then. It was like pretty iffy. But I kept running across these studies, and I thought, well, you know, this could not hurt me to try. I'll try it for 2 weeks. I can do anything for 2 weeks. You know, the mantra that you have, I can do anything for 2 weeks. And after the first week, I was already seeing results, and just in terms, not in weight loss, but just in terms of how I felt. I had more brain focus. I felt more energy. And now initially the first few days were a little rough, just in terms of hunger pains, but I got over that. And then I began to see a sustained, slow, steady drop off in my weight. And I lost all 35 of those pounds and a few more in about 7 months, I would think. And I got back down to the same weight I did the day I graduated from college. And that was a long time ago.
Wow.
Graduated from college with your first degree, not all these other degrees.
Exactly. My late Southern mother used to tell me that I had more degrees than a thermometer. So
that's funny.
But I got down to that weight, and I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. I thought, wow. And so I kept on doing it. And then I kind of roped my colleague, Denise Wakeman, into trying it. And she had spectacular results. And then after some months, we decided to put together a Facebook group, and we did that. And we've kind of tooled along. And I think a couple of years ago, we started the IF Insider, which is this new, newsletters hosted on Substack for people who are interested in intermittent fasting. And we've kind of really spilled over beyond entrepreneurs.
Sure.
But anyone really who is interested in intermittent fasting can take a look.
We back up for a minute and talk a little bit about what the term intermittent fasting means, because I've heard it described a lot of different kinds of fasting. So, what are we actually talking about?
Well, it is, and you're correct in terms of there's a reason to be confused because people, I call it one of those garbage can terms because everybody just uses it however they want. Some people say, oh, well, it's 5-2. You have to fast 5 days and then rest 2. And other people say, no, it's like these extended 48 to 72 hour fast. And then you do it that once a month and blah, blah, blah. But the way I defined it and the way that Denise and I had been doing it is really time restricted, daily time restricted fasting or daily time restricted eating, however you want to look at it, So I fast and Denise fasts every day for a certain number of hours, including sleep. And then we eat within a reasonable window. And that can be flexible too. We can talk about that. But that's what we mean by it is this time, daily time restricted eating or time restricted fasting.
Okay. So you're not looking at it monthly or weekly. You're looking at it daily.
Exactly. Daily.
Got it.
So I understand what you're doing, the time restricted, the 5-2 fasting and all of that. Is there anything in particular that you recommend for women over 50? I mean, is there one better than the other for us?
Well, personally, I think the daily time restricted fasting is better just because from my personal experience. Because here's what happens. When you first begin to do intermittent fasting, you're not what we call fat adapted. Your body doesn't have easy access to your fat stores. And we know that. You know how you hang on to it. It's easy to put on fat, but it sure is hard to lose it, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. So your body is we're evolutionarily programmed to hang on to fat as a survival mechanism. So you got to get past that somehow. So when you first begin to do daily fasting, your body screams at you, I'm starving. We're going to die.
Yeah.
And so you have to get past that until you become what's called fat adapted. And I can talk more about what that means in detail in a minute. But once you become fat adapted, and that takes anywhere from 10 days to 2 weeks, sometimes several weeks, for people to reach that point where fasting becomes easy, you no longer feel hungry, you feel focused and alert, and you're just ready. Your brain is like ready to go because your brain's burning fat for fuel at that point. I would say I'm probably can't remember the last time I ate yesterday. I guess I'm probably about 21 hours into a fast right now. And I'll eat after we're done with this talk. And I feel perfectly focused and fine and not hungry.
So what would you say the benefits of intermittent fasting are? Losing weight and...
Well, they're almost too numerous to count these days.
Particularly for women over 50.
Okay. I think most people come to this like I did for the weight loss, but there's no guarantee, just like in life, there's no guarantee of anything, but the majority of people who do intermittent fasting consistently will lose weight. But like I say, you come for the weight loss and you stay for the other benefits, right? It has a tremendous impact on your long-term health. There's many research proven benefits to intermittent fasting, including a decrease in inflammation of the body. That has spillover, of course, into longevity.
Sure.
Into the development of lower risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. There is more brain focus. You have a much less risk of developing type 2 diabetes. In fact, some people have reversed their type 2 diabetes with intermittent fasting. There's also, in addition to fat loss, a lot of people see an increased loss in visceral fat. That's the fat that collects around our organs, in the belly, around the liver, around just around,
Around the heart. I always think of that around the heart.
Exactly. You get an increase in the efficiency of cellular repair, which is known as autophagy, AUTOPHAGY, which basically means auto from self and phagy, which means to eat. So self-eating. And that's a natural process that our bodies undergo to repair damaged cells. But with intermittent fasting, it speeds that process up and makes it more efficient. There are also some evidence that it may help to prevent certain types of cancer as well. So there's lots and lots and lots of good stuff that you can do this without error. So even if you don't need to lose weight, you might well take this up just for the health benefits.
And you've seen all these different studies. So that's kind of what got you interested in this in the very beginning.
Exactly.
The results from the studies.
Right. It was like, I'm going to show me the study kind of person.
Right.
Not that I'm against any kind of alternative stuff. And I do think there are things that we just can't explain. But for this, I want to see the studies. In fact, there was a really excellent article written for physicians, which was an overview, a medical overview of intermittent fasting. I believe it was let's see if I can remember, and I can send this to you if you want to put this as a reference for your audience. It was published in the New England Journal of Medicine, which is one of the most prestigious medical journals in the world. And I believe it was in December of 2019, I think. I'll have to look it up for you, but you can get it for free if you go to the New England Journal of Medicine.
Okay.
And you can look it up. Now, I have to tell you, though, you have to sign up. That doesn't cost you anything. I think they give you 2 free articles a month. But when you download the PDF, it puts your name on it. And so you can't share it with anyone. It's for your use, but people can come in and read it. But that article was written for internal medicine physicians, and that got the attention of a lot of doctors,
right?
Because there it was in black and white in the New England Journal of Medicine, and they really explain it quite well there.
Okay, that would be worth looking at. So you mentioned being fat adapted. Let's go back to that for a minute, and can you talk about that?
Yeah. Well, most people, and I would say the majority of people, run around eating something most all day.
Well, that's true.
Either they've got something in their hand, or they're thinking about what they're going to eat next, or they snack. And a lot of our kind of diet culture has told us erroneously that we need to eat 3 squares a day and however many snacks in between to quote unquote keep our blood sugar levels up, right? I mean, that's been the basic wisdom. How many times have you been out and about and you see many people, they've got something in their hands to eat, whether that's a big gulp or some sort of soda, some sort of sugary, carbohydrate rich thing. So for the most people, they don't have a problem with low blood sugar. Their blood sugar is just fine. And in fact, they've stored a lot of that excess sugar in the liver. It's just packed full and somewhat in the muscle, big muscles of the thighs and that kind of thing. But most of that's packed away in the liver so that in between meals, when you get hungry, your body can go, oh, well, hey, there's plenty of food over here in the liver. Let's just go get some of that. And so it does. And it burns that glucose and stuff. And then it says, you better replenish that liver glucose, better eat something, So it's not burning fat at that point. So when you go for a prolonged period of not eating, your body starts screaming. It says, we're hungry. Eat, or you're going to die,
And so that's the sugar that's been burned up out of the liver, not the fat.
Yeah, it's taking sugar from the liver, but you still just feel hungry because your body wants you to replenish that,
Okay.
So eventually, after about 10 days to 2 weeks, you keep going in there daily. It's not that you're not eating. You're going in there daily and you're pulling some of that stored glycogen. That's the way it's stored in the liver from the liver. And those glycogen stores get lower and lower and lower. Well, one day you've been fasting and your body goes, okay, let's go over to the liver, get some of that stored glycogen, and there's none there. Well, there's never not none, but but it's so low that the body goes, uh-oh, there's not enough. We better burn some of that fat. And hey, she's got plenty of it hanging around her abdomen, hanging around her thighs, hanging around wherever it is we don't want it, right? So it starts to burn some of that fat. So by the process of intermittent fasting, you've now unlocked your body's access to those fat stores, and you flipped over to being fat adapted. All of a sudden, fasting feels easy. All of a sudden, when you're fasting, you feel better than when you're eating. Your brain feels focused and you're not hungry. Now, you go long enough, you're going to get hungry. And when I said I was 21 hours in, that's not beginning. I've been exercising my fasting muscle a long, long time.
Yeah.
Most people do not start out with that, and I wouldn't recommend starting out with that long a fast.
Yeah.
Did that make sense, the fat adaptation thing?
Yeah. So theoretically, our body should know to go to the fat, but for whatever reason, we're so accustomed to just burning the glucose from our liver that you actually have to train your body to start.
Well, you do. It's not evolutionarily advantageous for us to have easy access to those fat stores. The body wants to keep those locked up. And then when you have a time of hardship, when there's no food and it's forced to go get it, it will. But it's not easy.
Right. Which is why the eat less, move more becomes such a challenge.
Right.
It doesn't work. It's never worked, and it never will work. In fact, the whole exercise, we can address that for a minute. The exercise thing is a complete fallacy. Exercise alone will not cause you to lose weight. You've looked at the charts, and I don't have them in front of me, but you have to, you have to go run 2 hours to burn 100 calories. I'm exaggerating. But
right.
The amount of calories burned for when you exercise, it's pitiful. Now, that's not to say that exercise is not important. It absolutely is. It can increase your metabolic rate. It helps a little bit, but it just does not get the weight off. In fact, I didn't exercise at all when I was doing my first year of intermittent fasting. I'm sorry. I had a health situation in my family, and I was a caregiver. I probably took a lot of steps during the day, but I wasn't doing purposeful exercise.
You weren't going to the gym and working out.
I was not. I wasn't even walking. I walked when I could, but really I was not exercising.
Yeah. Would there ever be a reason, like a medical reason, not to do intermittent fasting?
Yes. Type 1 diabetics should not do intermittent fasting.
Okay.
Unless it was under strict medical supervision. I would never advise one that's insulin dependent. Now they're type 2 diabetics who are insulin dependent. They get to that point. But type 1 diabetics, or it used to be called juvenile onset diabetes, where the pancreas fails and you're dependent total, those people should not fast. If you're pregnant or breastfeeding, you should not fast. If you have an eating disorder, such as bulimia or anorexia nervosa, you should not fast. All of those things need strict medical supervision, and I would never advise anyone with those problems. And if you have some sort of complicated medical problem, and you're on medications, you need to see your physician and discuss it with her or him before you go onto a fasting program.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Thank you.
You sort of mentioned that you're at 21, you wouldn't start there, but when you're thinking about daily intermittent fasting, what would you recommend for a new person? And is there
Sure.
What's your advice on that?
Most people start out at what we call 16-8. They fast for 16 hours and they have an 8-hour eating window. It doesn't mean they sit down and eat for 8 hours, but they have an 8-hour window.
Confused, right?
That's right. Not to be confused. They have an 8-hour window in which to consume their meals. So for most people, that means that they're going to probably not eat breakfast or push breakfast a bit later, eat until 6 o'clock in the evening, and then not have anything else until the next day. Now, if that is too hard, some people back off to 14 hours or even 12. If some people there's no fasting police and there's no wrong way to do this. The idea too is to give your body digestive rest. I mean, most people don't ever really have a period of fasting because they're snacking right up into the moment they go to bed. And sometimes if they get hungry, they pop out of bed and eat something, even after they've gone to sleep, And so, and it takes 5 to 6 hours for that food to be fully processed through the digestive system. So by the time they wake up, if they got up early and they pop a donut into their mouth or a muffin or granola, whatever it is they have, they've never really had any fasting time at all.
Right.
Hardly at all.
So how would I figure out what's a good time for me? I mean, how does a person, if I start with the 16-8, how do I know if that's too much, not enough, or when I could bump it up?
Yeah. Well, I would say if you start out with 16-8, that's probably a good way to go. And I would just say, I have friends who are really early morning people. And so they like to do have their fast all in the earlier part of the day. Other people are night people and they have their fast later in the day. Now there's some evidence that having your meals earlier in the day is more beneficial metabolically and stuff. But and this, your pattern will evolve. But when I first started out, I was eating my meals later in the day. So you just have to see what works for you and you can juggle that around. You don't have to, a lot of people have this idea that, okay, I'm going to stop eating at 1:00 in the afternoon and I'm not going to start eating till X time. And they have this rigid open and close of their fasting window. And that's not necessary. It can move. Some people thrive on that, but other people see life happens and you want this to be a lifestyle, it's not a diet because we're not looking really at what you're eating. We're looking at when you eat it. Not to say that you should be living on Big Macs and milkshakes, but most people find that their choices become healthier over time too. So you just have to pick a window that you think will work for you. For some people, meals with their families are very, very important, that evening meal. Sure. And so you're going to have to try to plan around that. Other people can, sit down with their partner at breakfast and it's all right if they just have a cup of black coffee. You learn to work those things out.
Sure. What about long-term effects of fasting? Like, do you suggest people intermittent fast for more than a month at a time when they're first starting, or how can you answer about that?
Well, I've looked into this and I can't really, and we addressed this. I think I addressed this in a whole column on our IF Insider newsletter, but there are, from the research, what I can see, there are really no downsides to long-term intermittent fasting. As long as you're getting enough nutrient-dense calories in daily. Most people get more than enough calories in daily. So, they're not, but you do want to pay attention to your nutrition. The thing is, see, if you go, let's say you did this for a month, Chris, and you got fat adapted and everything. And then you think, all right, I'm going to take a 2-week break and then I'll come back to it. Well, during that 2 weeks, you lose your fat adaptation because you've refilled your glycogen stores back. Now, when you go to fast again, it's not as easy. You're like, oh no, now
you're back to the beginning.
Well, you're not at the absolute beginning. Probably in 2 weeks, you probably still a little bit better, but it's going to be tough again for you to think, oh, why did I do this to myself?
Right.
So, it's just, for me, it's just easier to stay with it.
Yeah. Well, you said about the nutrition, it makes sense that you'd have more nutrition dense meals because you'd be thinking more about your food because you're going to only be eating during those few hours rather than whatever you plan it ahead, I guess, more.
Right.
So I know you said, and that's certainly true, that intermittent fasting has become much more popular in the past couple of years, or, it's certainly well known. On our podcast, we talk to trainers, coaches, whatever, and we've had a number of them say, oh, you should not fast because, well, there were, I think, have been various reasons, but the one that I really think about is that we need so much protein as we age, and if you're fasting, you're not able to consume enough protein. Well, do you have any thoughts on whether or not we should, those who say it's not a great idea?
Well, there's various reasons, and it's usually trainers and, all that, and they have their various reasons, and I respect all of those. I'm not telling them, what to do. They can do what they want.
Right.
But for me, the whole protein thing has been a bit overblown. For one thing, there's protein in plant-based foods too. So you're probably, if you're only counting the protein you're getting from like milk, meat and dairy or fish, you're undercounting your protein because there's a lot of protein in plants, a surprising amount as well. And the whole protein debate has been raging a long, long time about how much we actually need and all of that. I just think especially if you have an 8-hour eating window, you've got plenty of time to get all your protein needs in, regardless of how much protein you want, especially now because there's protein powders and there's all kinds of high protein things that you can do. So if you're one of those people who wants to do a lot of protein, you can pack it in with your protein shake,
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. I'm thinking, there's a lot of conflicting information about how we should eat, what types of foods and what times we should eat and things. And do you have any advice on how to figure it all out? I mean, sometimes it gets a bit overwhelming trying to sort it.
I have 4 words that will solve it for you.
Okay.
Listen to your body.
Okay.
We are so enamored, or have been so enamored, of our Western way of one size fits all thinking. And why do we all have very different tastes in foods? Some people can't stand certain foods, and other people, they love that same food.
Right.
What's the difference? It's, it looks the same, it smells the same, it's cooked the same. Why would one person hate it? And you all know that what works for some people in terms of their daily routine and this and that would be terrible for you. I think the Eastern medical practices, such as traditional Chinese medicine and stuff, they take much more of that into account, that each of us is an individual with our own unique genetic makeup, our own ethnic heritage. Some of that's coming to the forefront now with the popularity of DNA testing, where you can feed your DNA results and find out, whether you should eat more carbs or more protein or whatever. So there's you just have to, I think with intermittent fasting, you really learn more than anything else I've ever done to listen to what your body is telling you. Besides, I'm hungry.
Yeah. Good. Well, some of our listeners are training for a marathon or triathlon, other events that are long distance. And, perhaps you have a way to incorporate intermittent fasting into their training and into their events.
Yeah, I'm not an expert in that area in terms of long distance running and that kind of thing. So I would be very hesitant to give advice about that.
Okay.
I think they should turn to probably a different source. I do know that it's perfectly fine once you become fat adapted to exercise. You do your regular exercise while fasting.
Yeah.
In fact, there's some evidence to say that people do have more efficient and productive exercise workouts when they're fasted. But that's a completely individual thing too. You're going to have to experiment with that. And when you're first starting out before you're fat adapted, I probably wouldn't exercise or just do some mild walking and wait until you're fat adapted. But if you were to ever do that and you get horribly hungry, you develop a headache that won't go away, or you get dizzy, then break your fast, eat. Yeah. Don't torture yourself here. So you're going to have to experiment with this and find out what works for you.
Thank you.
Okay. And I'm going to guess that's your advice too with strength training. So, I mean, there are people that say you need to eat right before you strength train or right after.
I'm not an expert on strength training.
Okay.
So I would hesitate to give advice on that. I know there's specific things that people do if they're looking to either build muscle or to build strength. I'm just not the expert on that.
Okay.
So I would turn to another authority on that.
Fair enough. And I appreciate you saying that, that's not my thing. It does seem like a lot of people who follow a paleo or keto diet also like to practice intermittent fasting. Yeah, so do you recommend any particular type of eating as a way of fasting?
Well, intermittent fasting can be combined with any other quote unquote diet, because we're just, like I said before, we're not saying intermittent fasting itself is not a diet. Yeah. It's just when you are consuming the calories, whatever they are. People have combined this with Weight Watchers. They're not calling it Weight Watchers anymore, are they?
WW.
WW. It's like a branding iron, the WW Ranch.
Takes too long to say Weight Watchers.
I guess. But you can combine it with any other way of eating that you have found effective for you, which is fine.
Yeah.
I did plant-based eating for quite a while, 100%. And then after a while, I just didn't feel as well on that. So I've added fish back into my diet.
Okay.
I'm also not one of those no oil people. I use olive oil, stuff like that. So,
yeah.
And my fasting pattern gradually gravitated to what is known as Omad in the fasting world, which stands for 1 meal a day.
Okay.
So I basically consume all my calories in 1 meal, which sounds drastic. I know. And you'll hear people go, oh no. But I did, and I would not recommend that for people who are just starting out. I've been doing this for nearly 4 years, and I did OMAD for quite a while. And then I thought, well, maybe I won't do OMAD anymore. Let me go back to 2 meals and a snack and see. I felt terrible. So back to OMAD. So that's what I'm doing currently.
It really does matter. Everyone has to listen to their own body. And
Exactly.
When you do OMAD, 1 meal a day, how much time do you give yourself to eat that meal?
I'm not concerned about that. I don't ever time.
Okay. So you don't say I have a 1 hour window or.
No, I eat until I'm full, but not stuffed.
Okay.
And that takes a long time to figure out what that is. In the beginning, in intermittent fasting, myself and almost every other person I've come across that I've talked to has overstuffed themselves at some point, because we don't know, and our satiety hormones and everything are in flux at that point.
Sure.
And you have to wait until your body knows. And so you'll overeat. And you think, oh, well, I better eat a little more because I'm not going to eat until, and then you go, oh, why did I do that? I'm never going to do that again until you do,
Right.
So that takes a while to work out for yourself what that is. And I still do it on occasion but you have to be gentle with yourself, right?
Yeah. What about alcohol? Can you drink alcohol while you're doing IF?
There are no forbidden foods.
Okay.
In IF, you can eat whatever you want, even in that Snickers bar and a glass of wine. I wouldn't recommend it, but
right.
I don't drink very much. I have a glass of wine. Maybe I had a glass of wine. Did I have a glass of wine last Christmas or not? I don't remember. I'm just not not much of a drinker. But Denise enjoys wine. She appreciates it. She's from California, right? So you got to enjoy wine. And she drinks wine and has never had a problem. Now, I do know that at some point, if you're doing this for weight loss, people reach weight loss plateaus, right? It happens all the time. And I do remember Denise telling me that at one point she did give up wine for a little while in order to break a weight loss plateau.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
Yeah. So there are certain foods, some people may have to cut back on carbohydrates for a while to get refined carbs to get their weight loss started again. It's the same with any other thing if you're doing it for weight loss.
Okay. And when you are opening your time of eating, well, you probably don't want to start with your glass of wine then, but.
well, you could. I usually recommend that people start with something that is relatively high in fat, like some olives, a piece of cheese if you eat dairy or plant-based cheese. They've got those now. Or just something relatively high in fat because it doesn't spike your insulin immediately. And I'm able to I have found that I'm able to enjoy my meal a little bit more. I found out pretty quickly if I started with a high carbohydrate thing at the very beginning, it spiked my insulin, spiked my blood sugar, and I just seemed to be ravenous. I just couldn't wait. But now that fat drips into your bloodstream, it just modulates things for me. That's what's worked for me. So you have to listen to your own body, but that has worked, and that's been successful advice for clients as well.
All right, that's good.
When you're actually in the fasting part of your windows, you can drink liquids, but there's certain liquids. How does that work? That's
controversial because there's certain folks that say you can have a certain number of calories, like the whole bulletproof coffee thing where people are mixing, MCT oil and not yak butter now, but grass-fed butter into their coffee and stuff, saying that a certain number of fat calories would not raise insulin. Now that's true, but I determined from the beginning to do what was called a clean fast. And for me, that's having nothing to eat, certainly, but the things that are quote unquote allowed, right? I hate to use that word, would be plain water, sparkling water, black coffee, black tea, green tea, all unsweetened, unflavored, either artificially or naturally.
Not even artificial sweeteners.
Artificial sweeteners and artificial flavors, even if they have 0 calories on the label, can cause your body to spike insulin. Insulin is a fat storage hormone.
Okay.
So you want to avoid that. So that's what I do. I usually start off, I'm a cold brew coffee person. So I do cold brew coffee in the morning. And then as the day goes along, I switch to Oolong Tea, which cold brewed Oolong Tea, which I recently added because there's a study out that Oolong is what's called a methylation adaptogen.
Oh.
It has some effects on longevity and health and gene expression. So I started doing that. And then I have a supply of green tea, which is so they kind of decrease in caffeine as the day goes along. And then by the end of the day, I'm usually drinking something like Topo Chico water when I could get it, but the supply is gone here. So I usually have like Pellegrino or just plain ice water. As a Southerner, I just have ice drinks. I hardly ever drink anything hot, but you could switch all those out to warm.
Sure.
In our introduction of you today, we said that you publish the Intermittent Fasting Insider.
Yeah, IF Insider for short. And you can, if you just say IF for intermittent fasting, right. ifinsider.com.
Okay.
That'll take you right over there.
Great.
It should. You can test it, but it should.
In our description of that, it says that you talk about innovations and practices that can be stacked with IF. So yes. I was kind of curious about what that means.
Well, right. Well, you've heard probably about people who are like bodybuilding. This came from like bodybuilders and now people like Dave Asprey from Bulletproof Coffee, but they have their stack of vitamins.
Oh, right. Yes. Yes.
You know, a nootropic stack or whatever it is.
Yes.
So I thought, okay, if intermittent fasting is one of the most important things I can do for my health and longevity, which I believe it is, and you run across all these other things, which then somebody says, well, this is the most important thing you can do is to walk every day. Well, maybe I should be stacking that on top of intermittent fasting, right? So what we want to do is explore all of these other things that have a big impact or a cumulative impact on our health and well-being and stack it with IF. Doesn't mean that we're doing it at the same time necessarily,
right. But
we are incorporating these things into our practices. And sometimes I'll experiment with something for a month and I figure, well, that didn't work, or I don't see it in effect, or I don't like that. Or this thing, like the Oolong Tea, I'm going to keep, and it becomes part of my stack.
Okay. We could find out more about those things in the newsletter.
Yeah, you can. Well, okay. But I could probably rattle off a list of stacked things like red light therapy called photobiomodulation, cold thermogenesis, which is a cold exposure, cold showers, exercise, certainly, meditation, certain supplements. I was never a big supplement person, but I found out pretty quickly I had to start taking magnesium because I and so many other people, for some reason, get leg cramps when we do intermittent fasting. So I started taking magnesium. Since the pandemic started, I also take a protocol with zinc, vitamin C, and quercetin, which has been proven to increase your cellular ability to keep the spike protein from getting inside the cell. So I do that daily. And let's see, what else do I do? Mostly plant-based. I do some fish, just, various things like that. I'm constantly trying things.
Okay.
We also mentioned that you have a free Facebook group for entrepreneurs interested in intermittent fasting.
Yes.
And I know you've had that for a while, but you've also started a paid membership called the Longevity Experience. Can you tell us more about that? And what is this project?
Yeah, the Longevity Experience evolved from another paid membership. It used to be called the Fast Factor Circle. But once Denise and I decided that we'd been doing this for 4 years, and Denise has been doing it just about as long as I have. She started a few months later. And we kept building up this thing that intermittent fasting wasn't the only thing. It was all these other things that we were putting on top of it, right? So we wanted to expand our focus more on longevity. Now, not just for the sake of living longer, because we've all seen people that live longer and they don't have a good quality of life. What we want to aim for is a health span that comes as close to our lifespan as possible, right?
Right.
So that's what we mean by longevity. So when we were doing the Fast Factor Circle, we ran across this study. This is the one that Oolong Tea was in, by a naturopathic physician named, I think her name is Cora Fitzgerald. And she was doing a clinical trial on something called on this longevity diet and with other things and they were measuring people's epigenetic blood markers, and it had increased their longevity by like 3 years in just 8 weeks of doing this protocol.
Oh, wow.
Well, I know. Well, these were blood markers with a grain of salt, but
Gotcha.
But we decided we were going to kind of and they laid out what they were doing right there in the study. So we put that information to our fast factor thing and did an 8-week protocol with our group, but would not say you have to follow this strictly, but just saying, there are things we want to experiment with and this and that. So when we decided to move from a strict intermittent fasting thing to longevity, we decided to kind of make that the basis for the longevity experience. And we did another kickoff. In fact, we're in the middle of it right now with the longevity experience. And we're going to just change the focus of our paid membership into focusing on a lot of the topics that I've already covered in the couple of years that we've had the fast factor circle, but looking at them now through the lens of longevity, because there's so much new research information and that kind of thing. But a lot of people, if you listen to some of these podcasts, and I admire these people, Dr. Huberman, the Huberman Lab.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Dr. Rhonda Patrick, Dr. Peter Attia of The Drive. But people kept telling me, they say, Ellen, we listen to these podcasts, but we don't understand half of what they're saying. So I ended up having to listen to the podcast and then translate what they were saying, because that's what I did as a PA for 20 plus years in the emergency room. I translated complex medical information into lay language that people could easily understand. So I thought, oh, well, okay, I can listen to this. And sometimes I have to look up stuff too. So what are they talking about here? And translate this into information that people could understand, like the fat adaptation thing. You can go through a whole bunch of chemical reactions and this and that, but it's a lot easier to say, look, your liver fills up with this glucose in the form of glycogen, and when you get hungry, your body goes over there and gets it. I mean, that's a lot easier and it puts a picture in people's minds. So that's what we're trying to do with the longevity experience, is that we meet several times a month on Zoom. Well, we have a Facebook group, and I do a deep dive once a month on a particular topic through the lens of longevity, bringing some of this current information to our group. And we have a lot of fun.
That's interesting. I have to say, I find Peter Attia to be he has so much information.
Yeah.
I really like listening to him, but half the time I'm like, I have no idea what this guy's talking about.
Well, exactly. He's almost talking to other physicians. Or
yes, he is very technical, and
and people who are trained, highly trained like he is, and Huberman's a little bit better.
Yeah.
Rhonda Patrick can go off into the weeds too, but they're all very good and they have great information.
Yeah.
Right.
But they find it very difficult. Just because you know something doesn't mean you can teach it. We all know that, right? And so you end up not understanding what they're saying, and you're like, well, that's over my head.
Yeah. I worked many, many years as a technical writer, and that was my job, was to talk to technical people, and then
you
figure
get
out
it.
what do the rest of us need to know.
Exactly.
How can I explain this where the average person can have a clue?
Exactly. Without making them feel stupid.
Well, right. Because there's lots of great information that you don't have to be a physician to learn how to improve your health.
Right.
Exactly. And you don't need to know every chemical reaction. And chances are the physician doesn't remember the chemical reaction they learned in medical school anyway.
And everybody's starting from a different place and with different questions in their mind of what they're trying to address.
Yes. And different backgrounds and everything. Right. Sure.
I can't remember what the name of your Facebook group is.
Well, if they went to IF for entrepreneurs, it'll take them there.
Okay. And do they actually have to be entrepreneurs to join?
No, they do not. But it's too late to change the name now.
Yes, I
understand. But what I like to say, we're all entrepreneurs because we are the CEOs of our own lives, right?
Well, that's true.
Right, we are. So you can come on in. You're the CEO of your own life. We'll welcome you with open arms. There's lots and lots and lots of fantastic information in our files. There's a very supportive community.
That's great.
Invite anyone to come in. It'll ask you a series of questions, at the beginning to make sure you're not some weird robot or something, and just answer those. And they're just yes, no questions. I think there's 3 of them. and then we'll approve you and you can come in and join the fun.
All right, great.
We'll put those links in the show notes, both the ifinsider.com for those that want to look at your newsletter and the Facebook group IF for Entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Is there any place else that they should be looking for information from you?
Those are the two main things. To get a real great idea of what's going on in our world would be the IF Insider. This Substack thing, because we publish regularly every 2 weeks. I think we've published nearly 60 issues now, and there's just a wealth of information. I do a fairly good deep dive on topics in there.
Yeah,
I've just covered the gamut there, so that'd be a great resource. Plus, if there's anything upcoming that they need to know about, memberships or anything like that, all of that information will be in the IF Insider.
Great. Thank you so much.
I think we've asked you everything that we wanted to. Thank you so much for talking with us today. I feel like I learned a lot and I have a lot to check out.
Yeah, great information, Ellen. Thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome. It's been my pleasure.
We'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow, that was a lot of great information. I really feel like we really learned a lot talking with Ellen.
Yeah, definitely. One thing is I really liked that Ellen said she didn't know about fasting and endurance sports or fasting and strength training, because I sometimes hear experts talking about all that, and it's clear they don't do running or working out. And so I always sort of question that. I think we all have to figure out what we need to do while we're training. And I just appreciated her honesty.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. And she said, although it really works for her, it doesn't work for everyone. And I think we have to keep that in mind, that everybody's different. But I do like a lot of the sound information that she gave us. And, so much of it was based on research that she was doing. And I appreciate that as well. I'd love to hear what our listeners who either practice intermittent fasting or have tried it, what your experience has been with it.
Yeah. If you work out while you're fasting, let us know that too. We'd love to hear what you think about intermittent fasting.
Yes, you can leave us a message at our website, becomingellie.com, or in any of the social media sites. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube, and LinkedIn.
That's a lot of social media sites.
Yeah. We tweet, we post, we follow, we friend,
Yes, and I guess I should say that we are Becoming Ellie on all of those sites.
Right,
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, we like to meet people where they are.
Yes, exactly. So if you do go to our website, be sure to sign up for our newsletter while you're there. And also, please consider joining our Becoming Ellie private Facebook group.
Yes, we'd love to have you join us. Oh, and if you enjoyed this podcast, please tell a friend. We would certainly appreciate that.
Chris, it's been so good talking with you today. See you on the next episode of Fit Strong Women Over 50.
I'm looking forward to it. Bye-bye.
Bye.